November 23, 1942. Near Tabourba, Tunisia. The desert wind stings like sandpaper against bare skin. The air smells of burnt oil cordite and fear. A U.S. platoon hides behind a crumbling mud wall. Panzer column 3 o'clock, someone shouts. Dark shapes emerge, Panzer III and I-4 tanks. Their treads grind the earth, throwing sand into the wind. The sound crawls into every man's chest. Private Joe Mallory grips the crude tube beside him. It looks absurdly simple, a 5-foot pipe with wires. "You sure this thing works?" Sarge Donovan loads the rocket. "It'll work. Supposed to burn through armor." Mallory stares at the small finned rocket. "And if it doesn't?" Donovan glances at the advancing panzers. "Then you pray they miss." He slaps the launcher. "You're up, kid. Aim low." The tanks close in 200 yards, then 150. Machine gun fire tears the ridge above them. Mallory shoulders the launcher, hands trembling. "Ready," Donovan shouts. "Now, kid, fire." A flash ignites behind him. The rocket streaks out, white smoke trailing. Impact. A panzer erupts, turret popping open like a tin can. The platoon stares in disbelief. Holy hell, it worked. Mallory grins. It actually worked. Donovan slaps his helmet. "Welcome to the future, son." The Germans halt, confused. For years, their armor was invincible. Now a handful of infantrymen have pierced it. Inside the column, panic spreads. Scheisse infantry has rockets. "Advance and overrun them," Eberhardt orders. Shells thunder. The ground trembles. Mallory fires again, one miss, one hit. A panzer's engine deck explodes, flames gushing from its hatches. Hours later, the battle ends. 4 German tanks burn in the red dusk. A British officer arrives, staring at the launcher. "Good God." "Sergeant, what in blazes was that?" Donovan grins. "New Yankee invention. They call it a bazooka. Looks like plumbing." The Brit laughs. "Tell that to Jerry's tanks." 3 days later, German HQ Tunis. Eberhardt reports our tanks were hit by shoulder-fired rockets. His superior scoffs. Impossible. Eberhardt drops a scorched rocket fin on the table. Silence. Across the ocean, factories refine the weapon. The M1 rocket launcher, the bazooka, goes into mass production. Its creator once called it a stovepipe with ambition. After Tunisia, no one laughs. Soldiers train to load and fire in 10 seconds flat. A revolution begins, infantry versus armor. That night, Mallory lies under the stars. "Think they'll copy it?" he asks. Donovan chuckles. "Sure. Improve it. Call it their own. But we'll always know who built it first." A faint breeze stirs the sand. A tank burns itself out in the distance. In the silence that follows, a new kind of warfare is born. December 1942. Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. The snow crunches underfoot as engineers huddle around a firing range. A steel plate 2 inches thick waits like a silent challenge on a tripod. Lieutenant Edward Ewell adjusts the crude launcher resting on a sandbag. Colonel Leslie Skinner watches through binoculars. Ewell squints down the sight. "If this works," he says, "we'll have portable artillery in a jeep." Skinner smirks. "If it doesn't, we'll have a new way to burn off your eyebrows." Ewell fires. The rocket shrieks across the range, trailing white smoke. Clangett punches a neat hole straight through the steel plate. The engineers erupt in cheers. "Congratulations, Lieutenant. You've given the infantry its first tank killer," Skinner says. Ewell grins. "Guess it's time to build more stovepipes." The idea began months earlier in a cluttered lab of rejected ordnance concepts. The Army needed a solution. Tanks outpaced the weapons meant to stop them. A shaped charge explosive and a small solid fuel rocket were married to produce armor-piercing power. Mounted on a simple launch tube and fired electrically, the revolutionary weapon was born. It wasn't elegant or particularly safe, but it worked, and word spread like wildfire. January 1943, Camp Hood, Texas. Training fields buzz with excitement as recruits line up. An instructor holds the strange weapon, M1 rocket launcher, 2.36-inch caliber. Effective range 150 yards. Armor penetration 3 inches at 90 degrees, enough to ruin a panzer. One recruit whispers, 3 inches, that's it. The instructor replies, it melts through armor. He fires a demo. The rocket slams into a derelict tank. A neat circular hole glows red at the edges. Silence falls. A recruit whistles, guess that stovepipe ain't no joke. Meanwhile, in Eastern Europe, the Wehrmacht inspects a captured bazooka from North Africa. German engineers laugh at first, a child's toy, they say, until it punches through armor. Oberstleutnant Ernst Schuler watches as the rocket penetrates a derelict panzer hull. The laughter dies. There is genius in simplicity, Schuler admits. Spring 1943, North Africa again. Bazookas now accompany every American infantry platoon. In dusty villages and rocky wadis, they ambush convoys, knocking out vehicles once untouchable. German troops call the weapon Ofenrohr, the stovepipe. They hate and fear it. Reports flood Berlin. Enemy infantry possess portable rocket launchers penetrating armor at short range. General Heinz Guderian orders study and improvement. Hauptmann Dr. Erich von Holt takes the lead. Within months, German workshops produce their own version, the Panzerschreck 43. Soldiers prefer a simpler name, Panzerschreck, the tank terror. Meanwhile, American GIs refine tactics, stay low, move fast, aim for flanks. In Cassino's ruins, Mallory and Donovan crouch with an improved M1 Bazooka between them. A Stoogie 3 rumbles down the street. Donovan shoulders the launcher, range 80 yards. The rocket strikes above the treads. The vehicle jolts, catches fire, and grinds to a halt. Donovan exhales. Looks like the toy still works. Mallory laughs. Yeah, they're building their own. In Berlin, Schuler's team finishes the first Panzerschreck batch, longer, heavier, firing an 88mm rocket. The design adds a metal shield to protect the gunner from backblast, a grim lesson learned. By 1944, both armies field men with rockets on their shoulders, the battlefield transformed. But the war keeps teaching lessons. When Panzerschreck meets its parent in Normandy, Hunter, and hunted blur forever. June 7, 1944, Normandy, France. The morning after D-Day smells of salt, cordite, and blood. Smoke drifts over shattered hedgerows as the 29th Infantry pushes inland. Private Joe Mallory trudges through the mud, M1 Bazooka slung over his shoulder. Staff Sergeant Donovan checks the sky. Feels like the whole world's up there. Mallory asks, "You think they got tanks here, Donovan?" "Kid, this is France. They got Panthers now." 900 hours, near Saint-Lô. Hedgerows make perfect ambush traps. Panzer ahead. Mallory dives into a ditch as a Panther tank bursts through the brush. Donovan shouts, "Bazooka team, get ready." Mallory props the launcher and fires. The rocket hits but doesn't penetrate. "Didn't go through," Mallory yells. "Hit the belly," Donovan orders. The second rocket ignites the Panther's fuel. The hatch bursts open, crewmen scramble out. The turret explodes in fire. Mallory collapses. Jesus, it took two. Donovan, two's better than nothing. That afternoon, they regroup behind a bullet-riddled barn. Corporal Haynes grins. "You boys hear about the Kraut version Panzerschreck." Donovan smirks. Figures. They couldn't stand losing to plumbing. Meanwhile, German lines con sector. Karl Fuchs checks his RP's B-54 Panzerschreck. "Who's laughing now?" His Sergeant Weiss grins. Shermans approach the hedgerow. Fuchs fires. The rocket slams into a Sherman's turret, explosion flames. They fire again and again. The lane becomes a furnace of burning armor. Then Allied artillery answers, the hedgerow erupts. Weiss is thrown back. Fuchs crawls from the wreckage. He looks at the weapon. The devil's own toy. June 9th, Carentan. A rocket streaks from a window, flipping a Jeep Panzerschreck. Donovan fires back. His bazooka rocket blows apart the upper floor. Mallory. Guess they didn't like the taste. Donovan, nobody does. June 12th, near Saint-Lô. Bazooka and Panzerschreck define the battlefield reflections of each other. GIs joke the Germans copied the homework. Germans say they perfected it, but there's no laughter left. Each shot shakes the soul. Each explosion a heartbeat. And somewhere German engineers realize how the toy rocket turned steel into smoke. June 20th, 1944, near Saint-Lô, Normandy. The air is thick with humidity and gunpowder. The hedgerows once lush and green are now blackened by artillery blasts. Smoke curls between shattered apple trees. The 29th Infantry Division moves cautiously yard by yard through the maze of earth and roots that has become the most dangerous terrain in Europe. Private Joe Mallory and Staff Sergeant Frank Donovan crouch behind a mound of earth, listening to the distant grind of tank treads. The sound is closer than before the growl of a predator. "They're flanking left," Donovan mutters, adjusting his helmet. "Panther maybe two. Keep that tube ready." Mallory wipes sweat from his palms and checks his M1 Bazooka loading a fresh rocket. The weapon feels heavier than it did in Tunisia, not from weight, but from memory. Every shot brings back the same heat, the same blast, the same faces disappearing into smoke. The sound grows louder. Then silence. Donovan whispers, "They've stopped. They're listening for us." Mallory nods. The world holds its breath. Then a single rifle crack shatters the stillness, followed by the whine of ricochets. A moment later, the Panther bursts through the brush, Black Cross gleaming turret swiveling. "Now, Joe, take the shot." Mallory aims and fires. The rocket slams into the tank's side, sparks smoke, but no kill. The rocket's detonation flares too shallow. "Damn it," Donovan yells. "Reload. Move." They scramble through the brush as the Panther's gun swings toward them. The shell explodes behind them, flinging dirt and branches into the air. Mallory hits the ground hard, ears ringing. He reloads on instinct, shoulder bruised, vision blurred. Another shell lands closer, showering them in soil. Donovan rolls over, shouting, "Hit the turret ring, that's where it's weakest." Mallory rises to one knee, braces the launcher, and fires again. The rocket arcs low, striking just beneath the turret. The explosion rips through the Panther's armor like a fist through paper. Flames burst from the hatches, black smoke pouring into the sky. Mallory lowers the empty tube and exhales. His hands are trembling. Donovan pats his shoulder. "That's how you do it, kid. That's how you hunt a hunter." Across the valley, Obergefreiter Karl Fuchs, the same Panzerschreck gunner who survived Caen, crouches in a barn's ruins with his squad. Through his binoculars, he watches the Panther burn. The distant silhouettes of American infantry advance through the hedgerows, their bazookas slung casually like farm tools. He spits into the dirt. "Those damned pipes again." His squad leader Weiss shakes his head. "We took their idea and made it better. And still they win." Fuchs adjusts the sight on his RP's SB-54. "Then maybe the weapon isn't the difference." Weiss looks at him. "Then what is?" Fuchs hesitates. "Maybe it's who's got the sky." Above them, Thunderbolt fighters roar low, strafing the road ahead. German reinforcements scatter as the P-47s unleash rockets and 50 caliber fire into the tree line. Fuchs flinches as the ground trembles. When the aircraft vanish, Weiss mutters, "You may be right." July 1944. Saint-Lô. The city is rubble. Buildings lie gutted streets buried in debris. The smell of death clings to everything, oil, blood, rot. The Americans have learned to move like ghosts, small teams with radios, rifles, and bazookas flowing through alleys and ruins. The tankers trust them now. Where once the infantry ran from armor, now they stalk it. Mallory's squad sets up near the shell of a church. Donovan kneels beside him, drawing a rough map in the dust. 2 tigers guarding the crossroads. "We'll wait until they pass that wall, then hit the rear one first." Mallory nods, clutching the launcher. "If it's tigers, we'll need 2 hits minimum. Then make it 2. When the tigers come, the ground quakes. Their engines sound deeper than Panthers, a thunderous bass that rattles bones. Dust shakes from the church rafters as the tanks crawl into view. Donovan's whisper cuts the noise. "Steady, steady." Mallory waits, sweat dripping from his jaw. The lead Tiger rumbles past the wall. The second follows. Donovan signals. Mallory steps from cover sights along the tube and fires. The rocket hits dead center on the rear Tiger's side. The shaped charge ignites, tearing molten copper through steel. Flames bloom instantly, turning the machine into a furnace. The lead Tiger halts, turret whipping around. Mallory dives as the 88mm cannon fires, demolishing half the wall. Donovan yells, "Reload quick." Mallory fumbles with the next rocket, smoke burning his eyes. The second shot hits the Tiger's treads. Sparks fly, the beast lurches, trapped in place. Donovan raises his rifle and signals the nearby Sherman. Now, the tank rounds the corner and fires. The shell smashes through the immobilized Tiger's front plate. The explosion shakes the entire street. Mallory lies back in the dirt, lungs heaving. Donovan lowers his helmet, smiling faintly. Guess even the kings can bleed. That night, the men rest in a bombed-out farmhouse. The rain patters softly through holes in the roof. Mallory cleans the bazooka with deliberate care, as if afraid to put it down. Across the room, Donovan lights a cigarette. "You know what's funny," he says. 2 years ago, nobody believed a man could kill a tank with a tube and a battery. Now it's the first thing they grab off the truck." Mallory nods. "The Germans sure believed it once they built their own." Donovan exhales smoke. "They always believed in machines. We believed in people." He taps the ash off his cigarette. "That's why they'll lose." Meanwhile, in a laboratory outside Magdeburg, Germany, under the harsh white light, Schuller's engineering team examines fragments of a destroyed Panzerschreck recovered from the front. A young assistant notes the data on a clipboard. "Herr Oberstleutnant, the main issue seems to be rocket stability. Too many fail to detonate cleanly." Schuller rubs his temples. "It doesn't matter. We can build 10,000 more. What we lack isn't weapons, it's men." He gestures to the map of Normandy pinned to the wall, covered in red arrows pointing west. "The Americans have brought the factories with them. We can't match that." Outside, air raid sirens wail again. The engineers glance upward, eyes hollow. The sky glows faintly orange, another city burning. Late July 1944. Operation Cobra begins. Allied bombers pound German defenses, reducing entire positions to dust. The once fearsome panzer divisions scatter their tanks, crippled or abandoned. Mallory's platoon moves through open countryside, now no longer creeping through hedgerows. Donovan walks beside him, bazooka slung casually over one shoulder. "Hard to believe, ain't it?" Donovan says. "A year ago they owned the field. Now they're running from us." Mallory looks out at the wrecked armor dotting the fields. "Guess the toy grew up." Donovan laughs quietly. "Yeah, and it brought the war with it." The wind carries the distant rumble of artillery and something new hope. But across the lines in retreating German convoys, soldiers whisper bitterly about the same thing, those damned American stovepipes. They'd mocked it once. Now it haunts their every road, their every tank, their every dream of victory. August 1944, Argentan, Pocket, France. The countryside burns. The smell of diesel and scorched wheat fills the air as the last German columns try to escape the tightening Allied noose. The once glorious panzer divisions, the pride of Hitler's armored legions, are reduced to shattered husks, crawling east toward the Seine. Private Joe Mallory rides in the back of a half-track with Staff Sergeant Donovan and 2 other men, their uniforms streaked with soot and dust. The bazooka lies across Mallory's knees, its paint worn away from constant use. The men are silent, listening to the distant thunder of artillery. "Sounds like they're shelling the retreat roads again," Donovan mutters. "Yeah," Mallory replies, glancing at the distant plumes of smoke. "If I were Jerry, I'd ditch the tanks and run." Donovan chuckles dryly. "That's the problem, kid. The tanks are all they got left." The vehicle jolts to a stop. Up ahead, a crossroads choked with wrecks, blocks, the route twisted trucks, burnt half-tracks, and the carcasses of Panthers still smoldering. The men dismount cautiously, rifles raised. The silence is broken by the unmistakable hiss of a rocket. Whoosh, a Panzerschreck round slams into a jeep 50 yards ahead, flipping it into the ditch in a fireball. Ambush, take cover, Donovan yells. The squad dives behind the wrecks. Mallory peers through a hole in the armor, scanning the tree line. He spots them, 3 German infantrymen crouched behind a hedgerow, one hefting a Panzerschreck. The weapon looks monstrous in his hands, almost comically oversized. Left hedge 50 yards, Mallory shouts. Donovan shoulders his bazooka, steadying it on the carcass of a panther. Let's see how they like their own medicine. He fires. The rocket streaks across the field, striking the hedge. A blossom of fire erupts, scattering dirt and debris. Machine gun fire crackles in reply. The squad returns fire, crawling forward through the smoke. When they reach the hedge, they find only twisted bodies and a melted Panzerschreck tube half buried in the dirt. Donovan picks it up carefully. Heavier, thicker tube, 88mm rocket. Damn thing's a cannon. Mallory kneels beside him. They copied us, but we're still here. Donovan nods grimly. Yeah. But look what it's done to them. Every time they copy, they fall a little further behind. August 21st, 1944. Falaise Gap. The battle is over. What remains of the German 7th Army lies crushed in the pocket, thousands of vehicles, destroyed soldiers marching west under guard. The air reeks of cordite and decay. Mallory and Donovan move through the wreckage with a squad of engineers clearing mines. Tanks, trucks, and horse-drawn wagons lie abandoned, their crews gone or dead. Mallory stops beside a ruined Tiger. The massive tank's side armor is punctured by a clean round hole the size of a fist. He runs a gloved hand over the metal. You think that was one of ours? Donovan crouches beside him, inspecting the edges. Looks like it. Shaped charge burn, see the copper residue. Straight through. Perfect hit. Mallory whistles softly. From a shoulder-fired rocket. Against a Tiger. Never would have believed it 2 years ago. Donovan grins faintly. That's the thing about this war. You stop believing you die. Meanwhile, Berlin trembles beneath a different kind of thunder. Inside a dimly lit conference room at the Heereswaffenamt, the Army Ordnance Office engineers and officers gather around a map of France covered in red arrows pointing east. Oberstleutnant Ernst Schuler stands at the head of the table, face drawn and pale. His once proud tone is now quiet, measured. Gentlemen, the Panzerschreck has proven effective within limits, but we cannot produce them fast enough. Our rocket propellant factories at Peenemünde and Magdeburg are gone. Allied bombers destroyed them last week. An officer slams his fist on the table. Then find a substitute. Schuler exhales slowly. There is no substitute. We built a weapon to kill tanks, and now we have no fuel to fire it. The room falls silent. From the corner, a young engineer mutters, "The Americans never stopped building. They just kept making more." Schuler looks at him sharply, then nods. That, my boy, is why they will win. September 1944. Aachen, Germany. The war crosses into the Reich itself. Rain pours over the ruined city as the 1st Infantry Division pushes through streets lined with rubble. Every doorway, every cellar hides danger. Bazooka teams lead the advance, their launchers wrapped in waterproof cloth. Mallory and Donovan move carefully down a side street, puddles reflecting the dull orange of distant fires. Suddenly, from an upper window, a flash, another Panzerschreck rocket streaks toward them. It smashes into a building to their right, blowing out windows and spraying brick shards across the street. Mallory dives behind a wrecked Opel truck. Second floor yellow house, Donovan rolls into cover beside him. Reload. He pops out fires. The bazooka's backblast lights up the rain like lightning. The rocket slams through the window. The building disappears in a bloom of flame. Chunks of roof crash to the street. The rain hisses on smoldering wood. Clear, Donovan calls out. Mallory looks up at the smoking ruin. How many of those things do they have? Donovan shrugs. Too many, but not enough. He gestures at the skyline, American artillery flares flashing on the horizon. They can't feed their men. They can't fuel their tanks. And every time they pull that trigger, they're burning the last powder they've got left. Far to the east, in a snow-covered field outside Warsaw, Karl Fuchs fires his Panzerschreck for the last time. Soviet T-34s swarm across the plain like black beetles. Each shot he takes buys seconds, never victory. He loads his final rocket breath steaming in the cold. The launcher's metal burns his bare hands frozen to the trigger. He fires. The rocket slams into a T-34's glacis armor, shatters, flames roar, and for a heartbeat he feels triumph. Then the next tank's gun flashes. The explosion buries him beneath snow and earth. When the smoke clears, the Panzerschreck lies twisted beside him, its tube split open like a wound. The weapon that once promised invincibility has become nothing but debris. Back in Aachen, Mallory and Donovan stand on a rooftop overlooking the city. The rain has stopped. In the distance, the Rhine glimmers faintly under the moonlight. Donovan says quietly, "You know, when this all started, we thought tanks ruled the world. But it turns out the man with a rocket on his shoulder can rule a tank." Mallory nods, resting his hands on the railing. "Guess the Germans learned that the hard way." A single artillery flash lights the horizon. Somewhere beyond that line, the war drags on, but the age of the tank's invincibility is over. And all it took was a 5-foot pipe, a battery, and the stubborn courage to point it at a giant. December 16th, 1944, Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The forest is silent before dawn. Snowflakes drift lazily between the pines, settling on frozen branches. Beneath that peaceful surface, thousands of men wait in the dark, Americans half asleep in their foxholes, Germans hidden in the mist, engines idling under camouflage nets. Private Joe Mallory wakes to the sound of artillery. The ground trembles. The stillness of winter is shattered by thunder rolling across the hills. Shells crash into treetops, showering splinters and snow. "Get up!" Staff Sergeant Donovan shouts, dragging him by the arm. "They're coming tanks, lots of them." Mallory scrambles for his helmet, grabs the M1 Bazooka, and crawls toward the line. Through the trees, the dull rumble of armor grows louder. The snow muffles the sound until the first Panther bursts through the fog, its dark hull steaming from frost and exhaust. "Christ Almighty," Mallory breathes. Dozens follow, moving in formation, a steel avalanche rolling toward the thin American defenses near Bastogne. Donovan yells over the din. "Positions, hold your fire until you see the whites of their—" He stops himself, smirking grimly. "Until you can see their damn treads," the men laugh nervously, gallows humor in the face of the storm. The first shells strike the American line. Earth erupts in fountains of snow and mud. The blast wave throws Mallory backward, his ears ringing. He crawls into a shallow crater beside a fallen tree. Donovan slides in next to him, clutching a spare rocket. "They're not stopping," Mallory shouts. "Then neither are we." He hoists the bazooka onto the rim of the crater. His gloves stick to the cold metal. "Cover me." He peers through the sights. The nearest Panther looms through the haze less than 80 yards away. Its gun traverses spitting flame. A jeep vaporizes in an orange flash. Mallory steadies his aim, exhales, and fires. The rocket streaks through falling snow, slamming into the Panther's glacis plate. The blast rocks the tank, but doesn't penetrate. Didn't go through. Donovan reloads fast. Lower under the turret, Mallory fires again. This time the shaped charge punches through. The Panther belches black smoke and halts. Flames pour from the engine deck. Another tank rolls past the wreck oblivious. Mallory ducks as tracer fire rakes the tree line. Snow explodes around them. "We can't stay here," Donovan yells. "Fall back, move." They retreat through the woods, darting from tree to tree as the German column presses forward. Behind them, the forest glows with fire. Hours later, the Americans regroup on a ridge overlooking a frozen road. The sound of engines below echoes like thunder in the valley. Captain Miller, their company commander, kneels beside Donovan, voice low but urgent. "We've got 2 working bazookas left. You and your boy take the left flank. We can't let them reach the roadblock." Donovan nods. "We'll stop them, sir." The captain claps his shoulder. "Good. I'll have artillery on standby if they push through." Mallory swallows hard. "How many are we up against?" Miller looks down at the road. "Enough." They crawl into position behind a ridge of rocks. The cold bites through their coats. Frost clings to the bazooka's barrel crystals, catching the faint light of the burning forest. Donovan checks the wiring. Batteries are sluggish. Cold's killing them. "We get 1 misfire, we're done." Mallory nods, blowing into his gloves. "Guess we'll make the first one count." The Panthers draw closer, their exhaust fumes drifting through the trees like smoke from a dragon's breath. "Range 80 yards, Donovan whispers. "Wait, wait." He signals with 2 fingers. Mallory rises just enough to see the lead tank through the scope. The crosshairs settle on the side plate. He fires. The rocket slams home, perfect hit. The explosion echoes through the valley. The tank stops dead, engine screaming. Flames burst from its hatches. "Hit confirmed," Mallory shouts. Donovan's grin fades as he spots movement to their right. "Second one's got us pegged." The next shell obliterates the tree above them. Splinters rain down like shrapnel. Mallory rolls over, gasping. "We're pinned." "Not yet." Donovan shoulders the launcher himself, fires blind through the smoke. The backblast singes his sleeve. The rocket strikes the German tank at the base of the turret. The explosion tears through its ammunition rack. The tank disappears in a fireball so bright it burns the snow black. Mallory shields his face as the heat washes over them. When he looks again, both tanks are gone, only wrecks remain. Donovan coughs, smoke curling from his jacket. Still works in the cold. Mallory laughs breathlessly. "You're crazy, Sarge." Donovan smirks. "Yeah, but so's this whole damn war." December 18th, Bastogne perimeter. The snow keeps falling. The 101st Airborne and attached units dig in, surrounded on all sides. Supplies run low. The men survive on frozen rations and adrenaline. The bazooka teams patrol constantly, knowing armor could strike from any direction. Mallory stands watch at dawn, his breath rising like smoke. In the distance, faint engine noises echo through the mist. He grips the weapon tighter. Beside him, Donovan lights a cigarette, shielding the flame with his hands. "If we make it out of this," he says softly, "we're buying a bar. No tanks, no rockets, just whiskey." Mallory smiles. "You got it, Sarge." The engines fade away. Silence returns. That afternoon, a lone German Panzer IV attempts to breach the American line. It crashes through the snowbank, gun blazing. Mallory's team opens fire rockets, streaking in pairs. The first misses, the second hits dead on. The tank bursts into fire, its crew fleeing into the snow. Rifle fire cuts them down. As the smoke clears, Donovan exhales slowly. "You ever think about how far that thing's come?" Mallory looks at the spent tube in his hands. From a toy to a tank killer. Donovan nods. "Yeah. And to think the Germans thought it was a joke." He stares into the distance, voice quiet. "Now it's rewriting the damn war." Meanwhile, Berlin, December 1944. Inside an underground office, Ernst Schuler reads reports from the Western Front. His hands tremble as he adjusts his glasses. Every page tells the same story: Panzerschreck, losses high, rocket supply insufficient, infantry units requesting replacements that don't exist. He sets the papers down and rubs his temples. The ceiling rumbles from a distant air raid. Dust drifts from the light fixtures. A young officer enters. Herr Oberstleutnant, the minister, wants an update on rocket production. Schuler shakes his head. Tell him it's over. The machines still fire, but there's no one left to carry them. The officer hesitates, then salutes. Jawohl. As he leaves, Schuler looks down at a captured American bazooka on his desk. The paint is chipped, the battery wire frayed. He runs a finger along the barrel. They built this with toys, he whispers, and they beat us with it. Outside, the sirens begin again. Back in Belgium, Mallory and Donovan stand amid the wreckage of their latest victory, a frozen road littered with burning tanks. Snowflakes fall through the smoke, hissing as they touch hot steel. Donovan lights another cigarette, offers one to Mallory. You ever wonder what the Krauts called us when they saw these things for the first time? Mallory grins faintly. Yeah, I bet it wasn't flattering. Donovan chuckles. Maybe not. But I'll tell you what, they're not laughing anymore. He looks over the ruined battlefield, his voice almost reverent. This little tube changed everything. December 24th, 1944, south of Bastogne, Belgium. The night before Christmas, the sky burns red. Not from celebration, but from war. Allied flares hang like false stars over the Ardennes, illuminating the twisted trees and broken machines frozen in snow. The low clouds reflect the glow, turning the world into a blood-stained mirror. Private Joe Mallory sits in a foxhole, clutching his bazooka for warmth. The weapon's metal is freezing to the touch, but it feels wrong to let it go. He can hear the distant rumble of tanks through the snowstorm, the echo of yet another German push. Beside him, Staff Sergeant Donovan hums quietly, his breath fogging the air. Silent night, he murmurs. Mallory glances at him. You actually think the Krauts are going to let us have a silent night? Donovan smirks. Nah, but maybe we'll give them one they won't forget. They share a laugh that sounds more like exhaustion than humor. 300 hours. A sudden explosion lights up the forest. The line comes alive with gunfire and shouting. Tracer rounds carve green and red streaks through the snow, Christmas colors painted in lead. Contact front, a voice yells. Armor inbound. Mallory peers over the lip of the foxhole. Through the flurries, headlights bloom like ghostly eyes. A column of Panther tanks grinds forward, followed by infantry. The thunder of their engines shakes the ground. Get ready, Donovan shouts. Wait until they're in the clearing. The lead tank crashes through a pine tree, shattering it like matchsticks. Mallory's heart slams against his ribs. The beast is close enough to feel. He raises the bazooka sights, trembling. Range 60 fire. The rocket hisses out, slamming into the Panther's lower hull. The explosion is deafening, white flame erupting beneath the tank. The blast knocks Mallory backward. When he looks up, the Panther's tracks are gone, its belly engulfed in fire. The crew bails out, silhouettes outlined by the burning snow. Machine guns chatter. The Germans fall. Donovan reloads fast, his hands moving from instinct. Next one's yours. Mallory nods, teeth chattering from cold and adrenaline. He fires again, another direct hit. The second tank burns. The forest becomes a vision of hell, snow, glowing orange flakes melting in midair. The attack collapses within minutes. German infantry retreat into the darkness, leaving behind 2 wrecked Panthers and dozens of bodies half buried in frost. Mallory slumps back into the trench, breathing hard. Merry Christmas, Donovan says quietly. Mallory chuckles weakly. Yeah. Guess Santa brought us some fireworks. Morning. December 25th. silence. Only the crackle of burning wreckage. The men of the 29th Infantry share what rations they have. Stale bread, bitter coffee, half-frozen chocolate bars. Someone starts humming a tune. Mallory sits beside the bazooka, its barrel blackened from the night's fight. Donovan joins him carrying a tin mug. You know, he says, when this thing first showed up, we thought it was a gimmick. Just another fancy gadget from the brass. Mallory nods. Yeah, but it saved our hides more times than I can count. Donovan grins. Hell, I might name my first kid Bazooka. They laugh, then fall silent again. The smoke rises into the pale sky, twisting like ghosts. Elsewhere, German 5th Panzer Army headquarters, near Hufelies. Inside a dim farmhouse turned command post, General Hasso von Manteuffel listens to the latest reports. Our fuel reserves are gone, Herr General. Most of the tanks are stranded. The infantry cannot advance. American air power has returned. We've lost contact with the northern flank. Manteuffel closes his eyes. He knows what it means. The counteroffensive Hitler's last gamble is collapsing. What of the new rocket teams, he asks quietly. An adjutant hands him a sheet. Panzerschreck detachments have inflicted heavy casualties but are overwhelmed. They lack ammunition. The general studies the numbers. Dozens of tanks destroyed. Hundreds of men dead. Thousands captured. He sighs. Courage without fuel is just suicide. He sets the report down and looks out the window. The snow falls softly outside, indifferent to the end of his army. December 27th, Allied front near Bastogne. The clouds part briefly, revealing clear blue sky. Dozens of C-47s appear, dropping supplies over the surrounded town. The men cheer as parachutes bloom like white flowers against the morning sun. Mallory watches one drift down nearby, a crate bursting open to reveal food blankets and rockets. He laughs. Merry Christmas, Sarge. The Air Force brought us presents. Donovan grins, tossing him a can of peaches. Guess we're back in business. They rearm quickly. The bazooka teams are now as vital as machine gunners. Every platoon has at least one, and every man knows how to use it. The weapon that began as an experiment is now a standard of survival. January 1st, 1945. Operation Bodenplatte. While the ground war grinds to a halt, the Luftwaffe launches its final air offensive. Dozens of German fighters scream across the front, strafing Allied airfields. The roar of engines mixes with the pop of anti-aircraft fire. Mallory and Donovan watch from a ridgeline as the sky becomes chaos. Planes diving, burning, colliding. Looks like they're throwing everything they got left, Mallory mutters. Donovan nods. Yeah, like a cornered animal. But they're running out of claws. He pats the bazooka resting between them. This was the first nail in their coffin. They just didn't know it yet. Mallory stares at the smoking horizon. You think they'll give up soon? Donovan exhales slowly. Not yet. Pride dies slower than men. Meanwhile, Berlin. Oberstleutnant Ernst Schuler walks through the underground tunnels beneath the city. The walls shake as bombs fall above. He carries a briefcase filled with blueprints, the last design revisions of the Panzerschreck, 88 mm and Panzerfaust 150, Germany's desperate final weapons. He stops at a storage room where soldiers load crates of rockets onto trucks bound for the front. Many of the crates are empty. Where are the propellants, he asks. A weary quartermaster shrugs. Gone. No fuel, no powder, no time. Schuler looks down at the blueprints, realizing what he's holding is already obsolete. The weapon that once symbolized German ingenuity has become a relic of failure. He drops the case onto a table and whispers, "We copied their toy, and now it's all that's left of us." That night, under the burning skies of Belgium, Mallory writes a letter home by candlelight. Dear Mom, the snow's melting now. The war's not over yet, but I think we're close. The thing they called a toy, the bazooka, saved us again last night. Sometimes I wonder if the man who built it ever thought about what it would do, what it would become. I'll tell you this, though. Every time I fire it, I remember why we're here. Not to kill tanks, but to come home. Love, Joe. He folds the letter, tucks it into his coat, and stares into the flickering light of the fire. Outside, the snow falls gently over a battlefield littered with steel and ghosts. March 1945. Remagen, Germany. Fog rolls off the Rhine River like smoke from a dying fire. The skeletal remains of bridges jut from the water, twisted and blackened by retreating German demolitions. But one bridge, the Ludendorff Bridge, still stands, its steel arches scarred but intact. On its western bank, American troops of the 9th Armored Division prepare to move. The air buzzes with the low drone of engines, the clatter of boots, and the clink of metal on metal. Every man knows the stakes. If they can seize this bridge, they'll cross into the heart of Germany itself. Private Joe Mallory crouches behind a Sherman tank, his bazooka balanced on his shoulder. The weapon's once smooth paint is now a patchwork of scratches, burns, and oil stains. It's as battered as the men who carry it. Beside him, Staff Sergeant Donovan peers through binoculars. They didn't blow it yet. Guess the Krauts are saving the fireworks for us. Mallory grins. Then let's make sure we light it first. Donovan smirks. That's the spirit. At 1500 hours, the order comes down, advance. The Shermans roar forward, treads grinding on broken stone. Infantry fans out behind them, hugging the cover of walls and ditches. German snipers fire from the far bank. Then the tanks halt. Roadblock, someone yells. A column of Panzer IVs emerges from the opposite slope. Their guns trained on the bridge entrance. Donovan ducks as a shell screams overhead, slamming into the embankment. Dirt rains down. Panzer Company on the east side. Captain Miller's voice blares through the radio. Bazooka teams, get up there and clear that approach. Mallory and Donovan sprint forward, darting from crater to crater. The bridge shakes under artillery impacts. A Sherman bursts into flames beside them, its crew scrambling out. They slide behind a chunk of concrete just 20 yards from the bridge arch. Donovan peers through the haze. Their left side. See that Panzer near the gatehouse? Mallory nods. Got it. He steadies the launcher on the debris breath misting in the cold. The tank's silhouette wavers in the fog. He exhales, squeezes the trigger. The rocket whooshes out. A heartbeat later, a fireball blossoms. The Panzer erupts, its turret thrown sideways like a coin. Direct hit, Donovan shouts. But the celebration dies instantly. Another shell hits nearby, throwing them both to the ground. When the ringing fades, Mallory hears shouting men running, boots thudding on the steel deck. The bridge is theirs. Against all odds, they've crossed. He sits up slowly, clutching the bazooka. Its barrel is dented, cracked near the grip. Donovan helps him to his feet. You all right? Yeah, Mallory says. Think I killed my last tank. Donovan chuckles. Let's hope so. Later that evening, east bank of the Rhine. The bridgehead holds. Engineers reinforce the structure. Trucks and troops pour across. The air smells of river water smoke and diesel, the scent of victory inching forward. Mallory sits near a campfire, nursing a cup of coffee. Donovan joins him, lighting a cigarette. You ever think about how this all started? Donovan says. A couple of kids in the desert firing plumbing pipes at tanks. Mallory laughs. Yeah. Guess we've come a long way. Donovan nods. So has the world, but not sure it's for the better. They sit in silence, watching the orange glow of burning armor on the far bank. The river reflects the firelight like molten glass. Meanwhile, Berlin, March 1945. Oberstleutnant Ernst Schuler walks through the half-empty corridors of the Heereswaffenamt. Bombs rumble overhead. The building's windows are taped in X's. The air smells of dust and despair. He stops at a display case. Inside, two weapons lie side by side, an American bazooka and a German Panzerschreck. Both are scorched, their paint peeled away. He studies them for a long moment. An aide approaches, nervous. Sir, orders from the ministry, all staff to evacuate south tonight. Schuler nods. Go on ahead. When the aide leaves, he whispers to the weapons, "You were supposed to save the Reich. Instead, you showed us its limits." He turns away as the lights flicker, the city above collapsing piece by piece. April 1st, 1945, Ruhr Pocket. The once proud industrial heart of Germany lies in ruin. Columns of American infantry march past smoking factories and shattered trains. Prisoners line the roads. Mallory and Donovan patrol the outskirts of a small town. The fighting here is sporadic, now isolated pockets of resistance. They pass a ruined workshop. Inside sits a half-assembled Panzerschreck. Dust covers the metal. Nearby, a chalkboard lists rocket propellant efficiency emergency substitutes. Mallory stares at it. Guess they were still trying to make more. Donovan nods. Trying to fight a war with ghosts. He picks up a small nameplate, Oberstelt. Ernst Schuler. Whoever this guy was, he knew how to build weapons. Mallory meets his eyes. Yeah, just not how to win. April 15th, near Leipzig. The roads are clogged with surrendering soldiers. American convoys roll east toward the Elbe, meeting the Red Army head-on. The war is in its death throes. Mallory's unit encounters one last German roadblock, a single King Tiger dominating the street. Captain Miller orders bazooka teams forward. Take it out. Donovan looks at Mallory. You up for one more? Mallory grins tiredly. Let's finish it. They move into position behind a stone wall. The Tiger fires. The blast shakes the ground, pulverizing a nearby house. Mallory shoulders the launcher, steadies his aim, and fires. The rocket hits the side skirt, no penetration. Armor's too thick, he shouts. Donovan curses. Then we go closer. They crawl forward through rubble, 50 yards, 40, 30. The Tiger's turret groans, turning toward them. Mallory reloads. This one's it, Sarge. Donovan slaps his shoulder. Make it count. He fires. The rocket slams into the Tiger's engine deck, a perfect shot. The explosion is massive. Flames engulf the rear hull, smoke pouring through the vents. The great machine groans, then stops moving. The war's last roar dies in the street. Mallory lowers the bazooka slowly. Think that's the last one we'll ever shoot? Donovan smiles wearily. Yeah, I damn well hope so. They stand in the road, watching the flames fade into the gray dawn. In the distance, the church bells of Leipzig begin to ring, not for battle, but for surrender. May 8, 1945, Germany, near Torgau on the Elbe River. The war is over, but the land hasn't realized it yet. Smoke still rises from the forests. Fields are pocked with craters, bridges lie twisted across rivers, and tanks rust under spring rain. The thunder that once rolled daily across Europe has faded to a tired murmur, trucks hauling prisoners, cranes clearing wrecks. Private Joe Mallory walks down a ruined road, helmet pushed back. The bazooka hangs from his shoulder, empty and scuffed. For the first time since North Africa, it's quiet enough to hear the wind. Donovan whistles softly behind him. Feels strange, don't it? Mallory nods. Yeah, like the world forgot what it was supposed to sound like. They stop at a burned-out Panther by the roadside. Its gun barrel points uselessly at the horizon, armor warped and blackened. Mallory rests his hand on the metal. This used to terrify us. Donovan exhales. And now it's just another piece of junk. They stand there for a long moment. Later captured German factory outside Dessau. The building smells of ash and machine oil. American engineers collect documents and prototypes. On a table, a pile of Panzerschreck's barrels stacked like firewood. Nearby, a crate of rockets stamped with April dates. Donovan picks one up, heavier than ours. No wonder they added that shield. Mallory examines a cracked sight. Guess they tried to make it better till the end. An ordnance officer joins them. Panzerfaust 150, he says. Disposable launcher, higher velocity. Never made enough to matter. Donovan whistles. Hell of a thing. Building better weapons while their cities burned. The officer shrugs. That's the tragedy. They never stopped believing they could invent their way out of losing. May 9th, Berlin. The city is dust and silence. Rubble stretches as far as the eye can see. Beneath the ruins of the Heereswaffenamt, German engineers sift through debris. Ernst Schuler sits on a crate, hands black with soot. A young technician says softly, "Herr Oberstleutnant, the Americans are here." Schuler doesn't move. Let them come. He looks around at his life's work buried beneath rubble. A melted plaque nearby reads, "Innovation for Victory." He laughs bitterly. Innovation for defeat. Moments later, an American ordnance team enters. Their colonel offers Schuler a cigarette. "Hell of a war you built here, pal." Schuler lights it, voice low. "Yes, but you built it better." The colonel smirks. "You guys tried to catch up." Schuler glances at the Panzerschreck. "We copied your toy. Forgot to copy your faith." "Faith?" the colonel asks. Schuler nods. "In your soldiers, not just your machines." He crushes the cigarette. "That's why you won." May 11th, American camp near the Elbe. The men relax for the first time in years. The air smells of coffee and diesel. Music drifts from a field radio. Mallory cleans his carbine. The bazooka lies in two halves ready for turn-in. Donovan brings 2 mugs. "You hear the news, VE Day. It's official." Mallory smiles faintly. "Guess that's it then." "You keeping that thing as a souvenir?" Donovan asks. Mallory shakes his head. "Nah. I'm done firing at anything that breathes." Donovan chuckles. "Might be handy if your neighbor parks too close." Mallory laughs. "Maybe I'll turn it into a mailbox." Later sunset. Mallory walks alone beyond camp. Fields are golden wildflowers bloom. The Elbe reflects the dying sun. He sits under a tree, rereads a letter from the Ardennes. Not to kill tanks, but to come home. He looks down at the battered bazooka on his knees. "Guess we both made it home," he whispers. Meanwhile, Washington, D.C., inside the War Department, officers gather around a conference table stacked with reports. A folder reads, "Captured enemy ordnance, rocket weapons." Photos show Panzerschrecks, Panzerfausts, experimental launchers. A general closes the folder. "So the Germans learned from us, and now we learn from them." An engineer nods. "They're larger warheads, better propellant, valuable lessons." The general sighs. "Let's hope the next war doesn't need them." The engineer murmurs. "It always starts the same way, sir. Someone builds a better weapon." The room falls silent. May 12th, Germany, dusk. Donovan and Mallory sit on a hillside overlooking the quiet river. Mallory asks softly, "What do you think happens now?" Donovan exhales. "Now we go home. Build things that don't explode." He glances at the bazooka beside them. "Funny, ain't it, a 5-foot pipe and it changed history?" Mallory nods. "Guess that's what happens when you give the little guy a way to fight back." They sit in silence as the sun sinks. The wind carries away the smell of smoke, leaving only rain and new life. For the first time in years, the guns are silent. The soldiers can finally hear something else, the sound of peace trying to return. June 1945. Antwerp, Belgium. The port bustles with movement. Ships groan at their moorings as cranes swing crates of supplies and equipment toward the decks. Among the thousands of tons being loaded for return to America are racks of weapons, rifles, mortars, machine guns, and hundreds of dented, soot-streaked bazookas stacked like firewood in wooden pallets. Private Joe Mallory walks along the dock, helmet tucked under his arm, duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He pauses beside a forklift carrying a pile of launchers and runs a hand across the cool steel. A dock worker notices. "You boys use these things to turn the tide, huh?" Mallory shrugs, smiling faintly. "Guess you could say that. Funny looking though, ain't they, like plumbing with ambition?" The man laughs. "Doesn't look like much, but I heard the Krauts hated it. They called it the stovepipe," Mallory says. "I called it a miracle." The worker whistles softly as the forklift drives off toward the pier. Donovan joins Mallory, a rolled-up discharge paper sticking out of his jacket pocket. Say your goodbyes. Mallory glances at the departing ship. Yeah, she's done her job. Donovan nods. So have we. July 1945, home Kansas. The summer wind rolls over the plains. Cicadas sing in the heat, and the fields shimmer gold beneath the sun. It feels like a world away from the mud and fire of Normandy. Mallory stands at the edge of his family's farm, his old uniform hanging loosely on his thinner frame. In the barn, leaning against a wall, rests a single relic, his bazooka, the same one he'd carried through the war, now painted with the words Lucky 7 on its side. His father steps into the doorway, wiping grease from his hands. Your mother says you can't keep that thing in the kitchen. Mallory grins. Wasn't planning to. I was thinking of mounting it above the door. His father chuckles. Hell, boy, it'll scare the milkman. They laugh. For a moment, the war feels like a dream, but the world hasn't stopped turning. Across oceans, the weapon born from desperation begins a second life. August 1945, Okinawa. U.S. Marines test new rocket designs under Pacific sunlight. Engineers standing beside crates marked M1 Super Bazooka take notes as shaped charges punch holes clean through captured Japanese armor. One of the observers, Colonel Skinner, watches with folded arms. He'd been at Aberdeen when the first prototype fired through that steel plate in 1942. Bigger warhead, better battery, better range, he says to a young officer. But it still started with a $5 pipe and a crazy lieutenant's idea. The officer grins. And the Germans built one too. Skinner nods. Yeah. Funny how war makes thieves out of everyone. But we'll keep improving. Someone always does. September 1945, Peenemünde, Germany. Soviet engineers comb through the ruins of the Rocket Research Center once home to the V2. They find shelves of documents, experimental propellants, and crates of captured Panzerschrecks. A Russian colonel picks one up, examining it like a relic. The Americans' toy, eh? He says in broken English, chuckling. It will make good start for Red Army. His adjutant nods. Comrade Stalin will want all we can find. The colonel smiles. Then we shall build our own. Bigger. Better. He tosses the weapon into a truck already full of scavenged blueprints, the seeds of another arms race taking root before the ashes have cooled. October 1945, Washington, D.C. Pentagon. In a brightly lit conference room, generals and scientists gather. A chalkboard lists 3 words: rockets, jets, and atomics. At the far end, a colonel briefs the room. Gentlemen, the war may be over, but our enemies and our friends are studying everything we built. The bazooka, the Panzerschreck, the Panzerfaust, they're the future of ground warfare. Another officer frowns. Future. Those things are crude. A civilian engineer speaks up. Crude, yes, but portable. Cheap. Easy to teach. One man can stop a tank. Imagine what happens when everyone can. A silence falls over the room. The colonel clears his throat. Then we better make sure we stay ahead. November 1945, London. In a bombed-out warehouse near the Thames, surplus weapons are being melted down. The furnaces glow orange, swallowing rifles, bayonets, helmets, and rows of bazookas. An older man in a work coat watches as one launcher slides into the flames, its metal curling and softening. He mutters, "Good riddance." But another worker nearby, a young veteran missing 2 fingers, shakes his head. That thing saved my brother at casino. The older man sighs. Aye. Saved some, killed others. That's war. They stand in silence as the last of the launchers melt into molten steel, glowing bright as the sun before vanishing into the crucible. December 1945. A small farmhouse in Iowa. Snow covers the fields outside. Inside, the fire crackles warmly. Mallory sits at a wooden table with a cup of coffee, writing another letter. Dear Sarge, The corn came in early this year. Feels strange not hearing the engines anymore. I keep thinking I hear them sometimes out there in the wind. I still have the bazooka. Guess I couldn't let go of it. It's just metal now, harmless. But when I look at it, I remember every face we left behind. Hope you're somewhere warm with no tanks in sight. Joe. He folds the letter, sets it beside a photograph, two men grinning in the mud, holding the same launcher between them. Outside, the wind sweeps across the empty fields. The war is over. But its echoes, the sound of rockets, the flash of steel, the courage of the men who carried a toy into the fire still linger in the quiet. And somewhere in an armory or a museum or a farm barn half a world away, a bazooka waits in the dark, silent now, but still a symbol of the day when flesh and iron met as equals. January 1946. Fort Benning, Georgia. The frost crackles beneath the boots of a new generation of soldiers. They stand in perfect lines on the firing range, shoulders squared, waiting for orders. Instructors walk up and down the ranks, their voices cutting through the morning air like rifles cracking. Listen up. You're not just infantrymen anymore. You're rocket infantry. The men laugh nervously, unsure whether it's a joke. It isn't. On tables behind the line lie a new breed of weapons, sleek, longer polished tubes painted in fresh olive drab. The M1 Super Bazooka, weighing just under 15 pounds, capable of punching through 11 inches of armor. Captain Frank Donovan, his sergeant stripes now replaced with officer bars, watches from behind mirrored sunglasses. His limp is barely noticeable, but the scars on his hands from backblast, burns, still show. He raises his voice. I fired one of these damn things in the Ardennes. You hit a tiger with it, it lights up like a Christmas tree. But if you don't aim right, it'll kill you before it kills the enemy. The recruits laugh nervously again. Donovan doesn't smile. You think this is a toy? That's what the Germans thought. Don't make their mistake. He motions toward the range. Fire when ready. The first shot streaks downrange, a white comet slicing through the winter air. The rocket smashes into the rusted hulk of an old tank, leaving a glowing crater in the armor. The explosion echoes off the pine trees. The recruits cheer. Donovan simply nods. Good. Now fire again. That afternoon, inside the base briefing room, a small group of officers gathers around a blackboard. The chalk diagrams show silhouettes of tanks and arrows representing angles of attack. At the center of the board, written in thick white letters, are the words, Infantry Armor Integration, New Age of Tactics. A young major gestures at the diagram. The Germans used their Panzerschreck to delay our armor. We'll use our bazookas to lead it. From now on, every platoon will have 2 teams trained in anti-tank warfare. Donovan leans back, arms crossed. So now every grunt's a tank killer. The major smiles. That's the idea. Donovan exhales. Let's hope we don't need to prove it anytime soon. March 1946. West Point. New York, in a cold lecture hall, cadets listen as a guest lecturer speaks. Lieutenant Edward Ewell, the man who built the first bazooka prototype in 1942. His hair has gone gray at the temples, but his eyes still burn with the restless spark of invention. He holds up a battered early model launcher for the class to see. This gentleman was the beginning of portable rocket warfare. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't perfect. But it worked. He sets it down gently. When I designed it, I wasn't thinking about glory or headlines. I just wanted the kid in the mud to have a chance against steel. A cadet raises his hand. Sir, is it true the Germans copied it? Ewell smiles faintly. Yes, and they improved it in some ways. But war's a cruel teacher. You can copy an idea, but not the spirit behind it. He pauses, glancing at the faces in the room, young men who have never heard a tank's engine in the dark. Remember that. Machines can be replaced. Courage cannot. The room falls silent. April 1946, Moscow. In a shadowed hall of the Soviet Ministry of Defense, officers stand around a table covered in captured weapons. At the center lies a Panzerschreck, its blackened barrel gleaming under the lights. Marshal Vasily Sokolovsky gestures to it. The Germans made this from the Americans' design. Now we make ours. Call it RPG Rochnoi Protivotankovy Granatomiot. An aide writes the letters carefully in Cyrillic on a notepad. Sokolovsky continues, "A soldier with a rocket can stop a tank. It is the perfect weapon for the People's Army." The men nod. The seeds of another doctrine, one that will echo through jungles, deserts, and cities for the next 50 years, are planted that night. May 1946. London. At a small ceremony near the Imperial War Museum, veterans gather beneath a gray sky. A memorial plaque is unveiled to the soldiers of the rocket, 1942 to 1945, who turned the tide with courage and iron. Donovan stands among the crowd, hands in his pockets, trench coat buttoned against the drizzle. When the crowd disperses, he walks inside. In a glass case under soft light lies an M1 Bazooka, its olive paint faded, its edges scorched. A small inscription reads, "On loan from the United States Army, Tunisia to Berlin, 1942 to 1945. Donovan stares at it for a long time. He can still smell the powder, hear the hiss, feel the kick against his shoulder. A museum guide approaches. "You knew those things," Sir Donovan nods. "Yeah. Saved my life." "Did it ever scare you?" Donovan smiles faintly. "Every time I pulled the trigger." July 1946, Kansas. Mallory repairs an old tractor in his barn, the door open to the golden fields beyond. The radio hums softly news about the trials in Nuremberg, about reconstruction, about peace. He wipes grease from his hands and looks at the bazooka still hanging on the wall, its surface rusting gently in the summer air. His young nephew runs in pointing. "Uncle Joe, what's that?" Mallory smiles. That's the reason I came home." The boy tilts his head. Did it win the war? Mallory thinks for a long moment. No, people did. That thing just gave him a chance. That night, lightning flashes on the horizon, distant, harmless, beautiful. For the first time, the sound reminds Mallory of fireworks instead of artillery. He sits on his porch, the wind brushing through the fields, and whispers to the dark, "Rest now, old friend. You've done enough. The world has changed. Nations rebuild, armies evolve, and new weapons rise. But the memory of the bazooka, the weapon they laughed at, the toy that changed everything, remains in the hands of history, as the first true whisper of an age where one man could challenge a machine." August 1949. United States Aberdeen Proving Ground. The desert wind hums softly against the metal targets lined along the test range. Engineers in khaki uniforms adjust tripods, measure impact angles, and check the rangefinders. On the platform, under a striped canvas tent, stands Colonel Frank Donovan. Older now, his face deeply lined, but his eyes still sharp. Before him is a weapon that looks both familiar and alien. Longer, sleeker, its tubes welded in seamless symmetry. The sign reads, "Prototype M20A1 Improved Rocket Launcher 3.5-inch. The lead engineer, Captain Harris, adjusts his helmet and says, "We call it the Super Bazooka, sir. Twice the range, double the punch." Donovan runs his hand along the smooth metal. It feels colder, heavier, the evolution of an idea he once carried through snow and blood. He nods. "All right, Captain. Let's see if the old dog still has some bite." The rocket ignites with a roar, streaking across the desert sky. A second later, the target, an obsolete Sherman tank, vanishes in a thunderous bloom of fire. The shockwave rolls across the sand, kicking dust into the air, like ghosts of old battles. Applause ripples across the observation post. Harris beams. Direct penetration. 11 inches of armor at 200 yards. Donovan lowers his binoculars, silent for a moment. Hell of a thing, he says quietly. But I hope to God no kid ever has to fire it for real. Harris looks at him, puzzled. Sir Donovan turns away, the wind catching his cap. Weapons like this don't end wars. They just make the next one faster. June 1950. Korean Peninsula. The sky over the Noktong River burns orange. Smoke rolls over the ridges as the sound of gunfire echoes through the valleys. American troops of the 24th Infantry Division fall back under the weight of North Korean armor, Soviet-built T-34-85 tanks, their guns blazing. In the chaos, a squad of U.S. soldiers hunkers down in the mud. Their rifles seem like toys against the steel beasts bearing down on them. Then a lieutenant yells, "Bazooka team, up front." Two men scramble forward with a long, gleaming launcher, the new M1 Super Bazooka, its muzzle flashing like lightning. The rocket streaks out, striking the lead T-34 dead center. The explosion lifts the turret clean off. The men cheer, slapping each other's backs, the echoes of Normandy and Bastogne, reborn in another war on another continent. Far away in an office at the Pentagon, Frank Donovan reads the dispatch. The words are brief: new rocket launchers performing well in Korea. Infantry able to stop tanks effectively. He sets the paper down and exhales slowly. The toy lives on, he murmurs. October 1950, Moscow. A Soviet officer demonstrates the RPG-2 before a crowd of generals. The launcher spits fire, and a wrecked tank collapses in smoke. One of the observers, Marshal Sokolovsky, smiles faintly. Comrade, it seems the American's toy has found a home in Russia, too. The officer nods. Yes, but ours will be simpler, cheaper. The soldier will be the tank's equal. Sokolovsky's smile fades. Equal. He stares at the burning tank. No comrade. Never equal. Only faster to die. May 1952. Kansas. Joe Mallory, now in his early 30s, works in the same fields he grew up in. The world feels quieter, but the headlines still roar: Korea-China atomic tests in Nevada. He wipes sweat from his brow and walks back toward the barn. The bazooka still hangs above the door, rusted and silent. A bluebird has nested inside the barrel. His wife Anne steps out to the porch. You coming in for supper? Mallory smiles. Yeah, just saying goodnight to an old friend. She glances at the launcher. You really gonna keep that thing forever? He nods. Yeah. It reminds me that once for a few years, courage was louder than fear. She smiles softly. And now Mallory looks toward the sunset, where the wheat fields shimmer like gold fire. Now I just hope nobody forgets what it cost. 1953, Bonn, West Germany. In a museum filled with relics of the fallen Reich, visitors move silently past exhibits of helmets, rifles, and broken medals. A young German boy stops before a display showing a Panzerschreck and a bazooka side by side. The plaque reads, "From imitation came innovation." Both sides believed they could build a weapon to end war. Both were wrong. The boy tugs his father's sleeve. Papa, which one was ours? The father sighs. Both, in a way. He looks down at his son. Just promise me you'll never have to use one. 1955, Washington, D.C. In a quiet government office, Lieutenant Edward Ewell sits at his desk, older hair white now. A journalist interviews him for a book about wartime inventions. Do you think the bazooka changed history? The reporter asks. Ewell leans back, staring at a framed photo of the first prototype. It did, he says softly. But not the way people think. It made the common soldier powerful. That was the good part. The bad part. He trails off, glancing at the newspaper on his desk. The headline reads, "Rockets now standard in global armies." The bad part is that everyone wanted one. 1959. The world moves on. The bazooka evolves again and again, the M72 Law, the RPG-7, the Carl Gustav. Small tubes that changed the face of battle carried now by men who weren't even born when Mallory fired his first rocket in Tunisia. The design that began as a toy becomes a doctrine, a symbol, a paradox, the equalizer of the modern battlefield. 1965 Kansas. Mallory, now graying and quiet, stands beside his grown son at the county fair. Among the displays is a National Guard booth showcasing modern weapons. Behind glass sits the M72 Law, sleek, lightweight, disposable. The sign reads, "One man, one shot, portable anti-tank rocket, U.S. Army standard." His son whistles. "That's wild, Dad. You ever fire one of those?" Mallory shakes his head. "No, but I used its grandfather." The soldier behind the booth smiles. "The old bazooka, yeah, that's where it all started." Mallory nods slowly. "Yeah, that's where everything started." He looks at the crowd, kids pointing, laughing, fascinated. He wonders how long before they stop seeing it as history and start seeing it as another toy. Later that evening, he returns home, sits on the porch as the crickets sing in the summer dark. The rusted bazooka above the door gleams faintly in the moonlight. He raises his coffee mug in a small private salute. To the boys who carried it, he whispers, and to the fools who'll carry it again. The wind sighs through the wheat, whispering softly across the fields.